previous lecture, we have learned about Ricardian theory of rent, and with the passage of time, gradually it was felt that Ricardian theory of rent has various limitations. For example, Ricardo has assumed that land has original and indestructible power. That is also objectionable because uh, there is nothing original. Actually, fertility of land can be enhanced or increased with the help of fertilizer or modern scientific inputs. Moreover, indestructible land cannot be indestructible. We know that with the help of atomic war or by means of any such kind of catastrophe, the power of the soil, indestructible power of the soil, can be destructed. Moreover, Ricardo has assumed that land has no alternative use, but today we know that land has various types of alternative use. For example, land can be used to build houses, land can be used to build any factories, land can be used to go for fishing and all these things. And Ricardo has assumed that land is a free gift of nature. This is also not true. Actually, quality of land changes, and we have to apply human or capital equipment to improve the quality of land. So, considering all these defects, gradually different types of theories on rent has been developed, and among these categories, one of the most famous theory has been given by Alfred Marshall, and Marshallian theory of rent is known as theory of quasi-rent. Now, what about quasi-rent? Quasi means not complete or incomplete rent. Actually, Marshall has identified this particular term quasi-rent for capital equipments. According to Ricardo, we know that rent can be arised in case of land, but Marshall has contended that Marshall has said that rent can be arise not only to land but also to capital equipments. Now, capital equipments has a speciality or special feature. What is that? Capital in the very short run, supply of capital is completely inelastic or maybe completely inelastic, but in the long run, with the growing demand, capital may be supplied with having positive elasticities. Now, according to Ricardo, according to Marshall, in the short run, when demand for capital equipment increases, then its supply does not increase, and the price of capital equipment increases abnormally. Now, the extra price that producers are paying for employing capital equipments may be considered as rent. Now, this particular rent arises in case of short run, but when we are approaching long run, then this rent disappears, because in the long run we know that supply elasticity increases, and as demand increases, its supply also increases. So the overprice or overshooting of price disappears, and there remains no rent. Since capital equipments is such a factor which have rent in the short run but no rent in the long run, that is why this particular rent is known as quasi-rent, as identified by Alfred Marshall. So it may be thought of as a temporary surplus that is going to the owner of the capital equipment, but this surplus does not exist in the long run. This quasi-rent may be thought of as the difference between total revenue and total variable cost. Now, we know that in the short run, total cost of production has two components. One component is known as total fixed cost, and the other component is known as total variable cost. Since there is some there are some fixed inputs, and the cost for those fixed inputs are fixed cost, and costs bearing for variable inputs are variable cost. Now, in the short run, we know that since there is some fixed factors of production, so there must have some fixed cost of production. So, in the short run, total revenue the difference between total revenue and the total variable cost is positive, and it is actually equal to total fixed cost, and total fixed cost is going as rent to the owner of the capital equipment. But in the long run, we know that all the costs are variable cost. So total revenue becomes equal to total variable cost, and there remains no surplus or no rent. So quasi rent exists in the short run, but quasi rent does not exist in the long run. Now, after quasi rent, we can think of another concept of rent given by modern theories like J.S. Mill and later developed by Jevons, Pareto, Marshall, John Robinson, etc. And this particular rent is known as economic rent. Now, economic rent is slightly different to quasi rent. In Ricardian theory of rent, we have seen that rent can be originated only at land. But in Marshallian quasi-rent concept, rent can also be arised in case of capital equipments. But in modern theory of rent, that is economic rent says that any factor of production can earn rent. That means labor can earn rent, or organizer can earn rent, and all these rents may be considered as economic rent. And this economic rent is defined as the difference between actual earning of any factor of production and its transfer earning. So any factor of production, when a factor of production is paid any remuneration, that is his actual earning. Now, if that factor of production can be employed elsewhere, then his possible or potential earning is something. That potential earning may be considered as transfer earning. So the difference between actual earning and potential or possible earning is the basis of economic rent. Now, this economic rent, we can observe that this economic rent can be considered as a surplus income, and this surplus income is enjoyed by various factors of production. For example, any efficient player, he is getting more money compared to other players within the team. So the particular efficient player who is getting additional money or surplus money, that additional money or surplus money may be regarded as his economic rent. So here are we can summarize the analysis in the following points. Rent can be part of the income for all factors of production according to economic rent. So all the factors of production can earn rent. Number two, amount of rent depends upon the difference between actual earning and transfer earning. And number three, rent arises when supply of the factor is either perfectly inelastic or less elastic. So this actually economic rent also emphasizes on the supply elasticities, and we know that within the very short term period, supply elasticity is generally remains at very low level. So there is created some sort of crisis of such factor of production, and due to that crisis, or with the growing demand, supply cannot be matched with the demand. With growing crisis, its price excessively increases or overshoots. So the factor of production earns additional income or extra income. That additional income or extra income may be termed as economic rent. So these are actually on theory of rent. So we have learned initially, first we have learned Ricardian theory of rent. Then Ricardian theory of rent has two concepts. One was differential rent, and the other one was scarcity rent. Then we come to the concept of Marshall, that is quasi rent, which exists in the short run but does not exist in the long run. And then we come to the most modern concept, that is economic rent, which says that rent is the difference between actual earning and actual earning and transfer earning. So that's all from our theory of rent. Thank you.